The alarm clock screamed at 4:30 p.m., just like it had every day for the past 3 years. Lisa rolled over in her small apartment bed, already exhausted before her shift even began. The sound of her neighbor's TV leaked through the thin walls, mixing with the distant hum of traffic from the highway. She rubbed her eyes and sat up slowly, feeling the familiar ache in her lower back from yesterday's double shift. Her 7-year-old daughter, Maya, was coloring at the kitchen table when Lisa stumbled out of the bedroom. The little girl looked up with bright eyes, holding up a drawing of a house with a big yard and a dog. "Mama, look what I made for you," Maya said, her voice full of pride. Lisa smiled and kissed the top of her daughter's head, breathing in the scent of her strawberry shampoo. "It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like the house we'll have someday," Lisa said, though she wondered if that day would ever come. The bills on the counter seemed to multiply every week, and her old Honda had been making strange noises that she couldn't afford to fix. Her babysitter, Mrs. Chen from next door, knocked on the door right on time. The elderly woman had been watching. Maya, for 2 years now, charging less than Lisa, could really afford to pay. "Don't worry about us," Mrs. Chen said with a warm smile. "Maya and I are going to make cookies tonight." Lisa grabbed her work uniform from the closet, a simple black dress with a white apron that had seen better days. The fabric was soft from countless washes, and there was a small stain near the pocket that never quite came out. She tied her long brown hair back into a ponytail and slipped on her comfortable white sneakers. They weren't the prettiest shoes. They were the only ones that didn't make her feet hurt after standing for 8 hours. The drive to Murphy's diner took 15 minutes through the quiet streets of their small town. Lisa had grown up here, graduated from the local high school, and never really left. Sometimes she wondered what life would have been like if she'd gone to college like some of her friends. But then Maya came along and changed everything. Not that she regretted it. Maya was the best thing that ever happened to her. Murphy's Diner sat on the corner of Main Street and Highway 6, a classic American diner with red vinyl booths and a long counter lined with spinning stools. The neon sign in the window flickered between open and OPE. The N had been broken for months. Inside, the black and white checkered floor showed years of wear, and the air always smelled like bacon grease and coffee. Lisa pushed through the glass door, hearing the familiar chime of the bell. The dinner rush was just starting, and she could see that tables were already filling up. Her manager, Tony, looked up from behind the counter with relief. "Thank God you're here," Tony said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's been crazy since 5 o'clock. Table 4 wants extra ketchup, and the coffee machine in Section 2 is acting up again." Lisa tied her apron and grabbed her order pad from behind the counter. She'd been working at Murphy's for 3 years now, ever since Maya started school. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid the bills barely. The tips were usually good, especially from the regular customers who knew her story. She started her rounds, checking on the tables in her section. There was the usual Thursday night crowd, a family with 2 young kids who always ordered the same thing, a group of construction workers still in their work clothes, and a few college students sharing one plate of fries to save money, Lisa knew. Most of them by name, or at least by their usual order. At table 12, an elderly man sat alone reading a newspaper. He looked to be in his 70s, with gray hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Lisa had never seen him before, which was unusual. In a town this small, new faces stood out. "Good evening," Lisa said, setting down a glass of water and a menu. "Can I start you off with something to drink?" The man looked up with a gentle smile. "Coffee would be wonderful, thank you. And could I get a slice of that apple pie in the case? It looks homemade," as Lisa said, returning his smile. "Our cook makes it fresh every morning. I'll be right back with your coffee." As she walked back to the coffee station, Lisa noticed a news van pulling into the parking lot. The local TV station's logo was painted on the side in bright blue letters. She wondered what was happening. Nothing exciting ever happened in their small town. Maybe they were doing another story about the old downtown, buildings, or the annual harvest festival. The coffee machine hissed as she filled a white ceramic mug. Through the window, she could see the news crew setting up their equipment. A woman in a professional suit was checking her appearance in a small mirror. While a man adjusted a large camera on his shoulder, Lisa carried the coffee back to the elderly man at table 12. "Here you go," she said, setting the mug down carefully. "And I'll get that pie for you right now." "Thank you, dear," the man said. "I'm visiting my granddaughter at the college. She recommended this place, said the food was good and the service was even better." "That's very kind," Lisa said, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. It was nice to know that people talked about Murphy's in a good way. The diner was getting busier now. The evening crowd was settling in, truckers stopping for dinner on their long routes, families grabbing a quick meal before the kids' bedtime, and workers from the nearby factory ending their shifts. The noise level rose as conversations mixed with the clatter of dishes and the sizzle of the grill. Lisa moved between her tables with practiced efficiency, taking orders, refilling drinks, and clearing plates. Her feet were already starting to ache, but she pushed through it. She'd learned to tune out the discomfort years ago. The job required her to be on her feet for hours, carrying heavy trays and moving constantly. She brought the apple pie to the elderly gentleman, who thanked her warmly. "This looks delicious," he said, taking a bite. "Your granddaughter was right about this place." As the evening wore on, Lisa found herself glancing toward the news crew outside. They seemed to be interviewing people on the street, probably asking about local business or something equally routine. She'd seen them do similar stories before, the kind that filled time on the late news. Nothing more important was happening. The diner's atmosphere was comfortable and familiar. The jukebox in the corner played old country songs, and the warm lighting made everything feel cozy despite the worn furniture and faded decorations. Lisa had come to love this place, even though she'd never planned to work here for so long. It felt like home in a way, and the regular customers had become like family. Little did she know that in just a few hours, everything would change. The quiet Thursday evening that seemed so ordinary would become the night that transformed her life forever. But for now, she was just a waitress doing her job, taking care of her customers, and thinking about getting home to tuck Maya into bed. The evening was still young, and the real story was just beginning. The evening was moving along smoothly when Lisa noticed something wasn't right. She was refilling coffee cups at the counter when she heard a strange sound from across the diner. It wasn't loud, just different from the usual chatter and clinking. Dishes. She looked up and saw the elderly man at table 12 clutching his chest at first. She thought maybe he was just having trouble with his food. People choked sometimes, and she'd helped with that before. But as she watched, his face went pale, and he made a gasping sound that sent chills down her spine. And his coffee cup tipped over, sending brown liquid across the white tablecloth. "Oh no," Lisa whispered, dropping her coffee pot on the counter. The ceramic shattered, but she didn't even notice.
Ow.
Her heart started pounding as she realized what was happening. The man was having a heart attack, right there in the middle of Murphy's diner. Everything seemed to slow down around her. The other customers were starting to notice too. A woman at table 8 pointed and gasped. Someone dropped their fork. It clattered loudly on the floor. Lisa's mind raced back to her high school days when she'd worked as a lifeguard at the community pool. She'd learned CPR and first aid, but that was over 10 years ago. Actually used it on a real person? Just practiced on those plastic dummy figures. But as she watched the elderly man slump forward in his booth, she knew she had to do something. Call 911. She shouted to Tony behind the counter. Her voice was shaky, but loud enough for everyone to hear. Tony fumbled for his phone, his hands trembling as he dialed. The other customers sat frozen, not sure what to do. Some pulled out their phones to call for help too, while others just stared in shock. Lisa ran to table 12, her sneakers squeaking on the checkered floor. The man's eyes were closed now, and his breathing was shallow and irregular. She'd seen this before during her lifeguard training, cardiac arrest. Every second counted. "Sir, can you hear me?" No response. She pressed her fingers to his neck, feeling for a pulse like she'd been taught all those years ago. It was there, but weak and irregular. His lips were starting to turn blue. The diner had gone completely quiet, except for Tony's voice on the phone with the emergency dispatcher. "Yes, we need an ambulance at Murphy's Diner on Main Street. A man is having a heart attack. Please hurry." Lisa looked around at all the faces staring at her. Men, women, Teenagers, elderly folks, everyone was watching and waiting for someone to do something. She could see the fear in their eyes, the same fear she was feeling. But she also saw hope. They were looking at her like she might know what to do. Her hands were shaking as she helped the man slide out of the booth onto the floor. He was heavier than she expected, and she had to be careful not to hurt him. Once he was lying flat on his back, she tilted his head back slightly and checked his airway. His breathing was getting weaker. The room, more to convince herself than anyone else, she positioned her hands on his chest, just like she'd learned in training. One hand on top of the other, fingers interlocked, arms straight. She could feel his ribs under her palms. The first compression was the hardest. She'd forgotten how much force it took to push down 2 inches into someone's chest. The man's body moved with each push, and she could hear the air moving in. Out of his lungs, it was nothing like the practice dummy. 1, 2, 3, 4, she counted out loud, trying to keep the rhythm steady. After 30 compressions, she tilted his head back and gave him 2 rescue breaths. His chest rose and fell, which was a good sign. Then back to compressions. The news crew outside had noticed the commotion. Through the window, Lisa could see them packing up their equipment and heading toward the diner. She didn't care about them right now. All that mattered was keeping this man alive until the paramedics arrived. "Come on," she whispered between compressions. "Stay with me." Sweat was dripping down her face, and her arms were getting tired. CPR was exhausting work, but she couldn't stop. She'd learned that stopping could mean the difference between life and death. A few customers had moved closer, forming a circle. Around them, "You're doing great," said one of the construction workers. "The ambulance is coming." His voice was gentle and encouraging, which helped Lisa focus. She continued the cycle, 30 compressions, 2 breaths, 30 more compressions. Her back was aching from being hunched over, and her hands were getting sore from the pressure. But she kept going. This man was somebody's grandfather, somebody's father. The same age as her own dad would have been if he were still alive. "How long has it been?" she asked breathlessly. "About 5 minutes," Tony called out from behind the counter. "The paramedics should be here any minute." An hour. Lisa's uniform was soaked with sweat, and her ponytail had come loose. Strands of hair stuck to her face, but she didn't stop to fix them. She just kept pushing on his chest, counting out loud, trying to keep his heart beating. The man's color was starting to improve slightly. The blue tint around his lips was fading, and his face didn't look quite so pale. These were good signs, she hoped. She wished she could remember more from her training. But she was doing the best she could with what she knew. Suddenly, the diner filled with flashing red and blue lights. The ambulance had arrived. Running toward the entrance, she felt a wave of relief wash over her. Help was here. "Keep going until we get there," shouted a paramedic as he pushed through the door. He was carrying a large medical bag and a portable defibrillator. Behind him came another paramedic with a stretcher and more equipment. Lisa continued. CPR until the paramedic knelt down beside her. "Okay, I've got him now," he said. "You did? Great, we'll take it from here." She sat back on her heels, suddenly exhausted. Her hands were shaking and she could barely catch her breath. The paramedics worked quickly, checking his vital signs and setting up their equipment. They put an oxygen mask over his face and attached wires to his chest. Is he going to be okay? That question yet. "Did everything right," the paramedic said while working. "You kept him alive. That's what matters." As they prepared to move him to the stretcher, something amazing happened. The elderly man's eyes fluttered open. He looked confused and weak, but he was conscious. He was breathing on his own. He was alive. The entire diner erupted in cheers and applause. People were crying, hugging each other, and patting Lisa on the back. She just sat there on the floor, hardly believing what had just happened. News crew was inside now, filming everything. But Lisa barely noticed them. She was still focused on the man being loaded onto the stretcher, still worried about whether he would be okay. As they wheeled him toward the ambulance, he turned his head slightly and caught her eye. "Thank you," he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. Those 2 words changed everything. Lisa went home that night thinking it was over. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, and her whole body ached from the stress of what had happened. After giving a quick statement to the paramedics and cleaning up the diner, she just wanted to get back to Maya and pretend it was a normal Thursday night. She tucked her daughter into bed around midnight, kissing her forehead and whispering about how much she loved her. Maya sleepily asked why Mommy was so late, and Lisa just said there had been a little excitement at work. She didn't want to worry her 7-year-old with the details of what had really happened. The next morning, Lisa's phone started ringing. At 6 a.m., she rolled over thinking it might be work calling her in early, but it wasn't Tony's number on the screen. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Hello," she answered groggily. "Is this Lisa from Murphy's Diner?" asked a woman's voice, professional and excited. "Yes. Who is this?" "This is Channel 7 News. We'd love to interview you about what happened last night. The video of you saving that man's life is going viral." Lisa sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. What video? It turned out the news crew had been filming when everything happened. They'd captured the whole thing, Lisa running to help, performing CPR, the man opening his eyes, everyone cheering. The reporter had posted a short clip on the station's social media pages late last night, and by morning, it had been shared. Thousands of times. "I don't understand," Lisa said, still confused. "I just did what anyone would do. Thought it wasn't true, and deep down she knew it. Most people would have stood there in shock or called for help without acting. She'd been the one to drop everything and run toward danger instead of away from it. By the time she got Maya ready for school, her phone had rang 12 more times. News stations, newspapers, radio shows, everyone wanted to talk to the waitress, who saved a life. Lisa ignored most of the calls. She had to get to work, and besides, she didn't think she had anything interesting to say. At Murphy's, things were different. Cars were parked outside that she'd never seen before. People with cameras and notepads stood around the entrance. When she walked up to the door, they all rushed toward her. Lisa, can we ask you a few questions? What does it feel to be a hero? What made you decide to help?" She pushed through the crowd, feeling overwhelmed. Inside the diner, Tony looked stressed but excited. "Lisa, thank God you're here. The phone hasn't stopped ringing. People want to know about you, about what you did. Just want to work," Lisa said, tying on her apron. But work wasn't going to be normal today. The diner was packed with people who'd never been there before. Some were regular customers wanting to congratulate her, but many were strangers who had driven from other towns just to meet the woman from the video. They all wanted to sit in her section to be served by the hero waitress. Lisa felt uncomfortable with all the attention. She kept her head down and tried to do her job, but people kept stopping her to shake her hand or take pictures. Family from 2 hours away had driven down just to eat at the diner where the miracle happened. "You're famous?" said one of her. Regular customers, showing her his phone. "Look, you're all over Facebook." Lisa looked at the screen and saw herself kneeling on the diner floor, her hair messy, her uniform wrinkled, pushing on the old man's chest. There was something in her. The expression that surprised her, determination mixed with compassion. She looked like someone who knew exactly what she was doing. Even though she'd felt scared and uncertain the whole time, the comments on the video made her eyes water. Thousands of people had written things like, "This woman is an angel in faith, in humanity restored, and this is what a real hero looks like." People were sharing their own stories about times when strangers had helped them or their family members. During her lunch break, Lisa finally returned one of the calls from a news station. The reporter was kind and asked thoughtful questions about what had happened. Lisa tried to explain that she'd just reacted instinctively, that anyone with CPR training might have done the same thing. "But you're the one who did it," the reporter said in a room full of people. "You were the one who stepped up. That matters." As the day went on, the story kept growing. The local news aired the full video on their evening broadcast. Other stations picked it up. Social media exploded with shares, likes, and comments. Someone had created a hashtag #DinerAngel, and it was trending. Lisa's phone buzzed constantly with messages from friends, family members she hadn't talked to in years, and complete strangers who'd somehow gotten her number. Her high school classmates were sharing the video with proud comments about knowing her back in the day, but the most meaningful message came from the hospital. The elderly man, his name was Robert, was stable and doing well. His family wanted to thank her personally. They said the doctors told them that without immediate CPR, he might not have survived. That evening, after her shift, Lisa sat in her car in the diner parking lot and watched the video on her phone for the first time. It was strange seeing herself from the outside. She remembered feeling panicked and unsure, but in the video, she looked calm and focused. Her movements were quick but careful. She spoke clearly when she needed to give instructions. When Maya got home from school, her classmates had already told her that her mom was on TV. Lisa tried to explain what had happened in terms 7-year-old could understand. "You saved someone's life?" Maya asked, her eyes wide. "I helped him until the doctors could take care of him," Lisa said. "Are you famous now?" Lisa laughed. "I don't think so, sweetheart. People are just happy that the man is okay." But Maya was excited. She drew a picture of her mom wearing a cape like a superhero, which made Lisa cry happy tears. Her daughter had always been proud of her, but now she seemed to think her mom was truly special. The next few days were a whirlwind. The video had millions of views across different platforms. News shows were calling it the most heartwarming story of the year. Lisa had to take time off work because the diner was too crowded with people wanting to meet her. She did a few interviews, always emphasizing that she wasn't special, that anyone could learn CPR and potentially save a life. She talked about how important it was for people to get trained, because you never knew when you might need to help someone. The attention was overwhelming, but Lisa noticed something beautiful happening. People were sharing stories about acts of kindness they'd witnessed or performed. CPR classes in the area were getting more signups. The video had inspired others to think about how they could help in emergencies. A week after that Thursday night, Lisa received an envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a check for $500 and a note that said simply, "Thank you for showing us what real heroism looks like, for Maya's college fund." It was the first of many such envelopes that would arrive over the coming weeks. People wanted to help the woman who'd helped a stranger without thinking twice about it. Lisa was beginning to understand that what had started as one terrible, frightening moment had turned into something much bigger than she'd ever imagined. Had been watching, and they'd liked what they saw. 3 weeks after that life-changing Thursday night, Lisa's world had turned completely upside down. What started as a simple act of helping someone had grown into something she never could have imagined. The envelopes kept coming in the mail, sometimes 5 or 6 a day, each one containing money from strangers who wanted to help her family. Lisa sat at her kitchen table one morning, sorting through the day's mail while Maya ate her cereal. There were letters from teachers, retired nurses, factory workers, and even some from other countries. A grandmother from Texas had sent $20 with a note saying Lisa reminded her of her own daughter. A group of firefighters from California had collected money at their station and sent it with a letter thanking her for showing what real courage looked like. "Mama, why do all these people keep sending us money?" Maya asked, looking up from her bowl. Lisa sighed, still trying to understand it herself. "I think they want to help us because they're happy about what happened to Mr. Robert." She'd learned the elderly man's name was Robert Chen, and he'd become like family to them. He'd been released from the hospital after a week and had visited the diner several times since then. Every time he came in, he made sure to sit at table 12 and order the apple pie. He always left a generous tip and spent time talking with Lisa about his granddaughter, his life as a teacher, and how grateful he was to be alive. The money from strangers had solved problems Lisa had been worried about for years. She'd been able to fix her car, which now ran quietly instead of making those scary grinding noises. The stack of overdue bills on her counter had disappeared. For the first time in years, she wasn't lying awake at night wondering how she'd pay rent, but the changes went far beyond money. The story had spread across the internet like wildfire, and people were doing amazing things because of it. Lisa had started getting messages from people who'd taken CPR classes after watching her video. A high school in Oregon had made CPR training mandatory for all seniors. A community center in Florida had started offering free classes every weekend. "You started something," Tony told her one afternoon at the diner. "People are learning how to save lives because of what you did." The diner itself had become a kind of tourist attraction. People drove hours to eat there, take pictures, and meet Lisa. Tony had to hire 2 more waitresses to handle the crowds. He'd also put up a small plaque at table 12 that read "Where Heroes Are Made," which made Lisa blush every time she saw it. One morning, Lisa got a call that changed everything again. It was from a woman in New York who worked for a major television network. "We'd like to fly you and your daughter to New York," the woman said. "We want to feature your story on our morning show. We'll pay for everything: flights, hotel, meals." Had never been on an airplane before. Neither had Maya. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. But when she told her daughter about it, Maya's eyes lit up like Christmas morning. "We're going to New York City? Like in the movies?" A week later, they were sitting in first-class seats on a plane, looking down at clouds. Maya pressed her face to the window, amazed by everything she saw. Lisa held her daughter's hand and wondered how her life had become so different from that ordinary Thursday night just a month ago. The television interview was surreal. Lisa sat in a bright studio with lights and cameras everywhere, talking to a famous host she'd watched on TV for years. She wore a new dress that the show had bought for her, and someone had done her hair and makeup. She felt like she was pretending to be someone else. "What went through your mind when you saw Mr. Chen collapse?" the host asked. "I just knew I had to help," Lisa said. "I couldn't just stand there and watch. My mom always taught me that if you can help someone, you should." After the interview, they aired the original video again. Lisa watched herself on the huge monitors around the studio, still amazed that this person everyone was calling a hero was really her. The host talked about how the video had been viewed over 50 million times and had inspired countless acts of kindness around the world. But the most emotional part came when they brought Robert onto the show via video call from his home. He was sitting in his living room with his granddaughter, both of them smiling and waving. "Lisa," Robert said, his voice strong and clear, "I want you to know that because of you. I got to see my granddaughter graduate from college last weekend. I got to walk her down the aisle at her wedding planning meeting. I got to hold my great-grandson for the first time yesterday. You didn't just save my life that night, you gave me the chance to live it."
Oh, Lisa.
Started crying right there on national television. She couldn't help it. Seeing Robert healthy and happy, knowing that her actions had made all those beautiful moments possible, was overwhelming. The interview ended with the host announcing that viewers had donated over $250,000 to a fund they'd set up for Lisa and Maya. Lisa nearly fainted when she heard the number. It was enough money to buy a house, to send Maya to college, to change their lives forever. Flying home, Lisa looked out the airplane window at the patchwork of fields and towns below. Maya was asleep in the seat next to her, clutching a stuffed animal the TV show had given her. Lisa thought about how one moment of doing what felt right had led to all of this. But the real magic wasn't the money or the fame. It was the ripple effect that kept spreading. Every day, Lisa got messages from people who'd helped someone else after seeing her story. A teenager in Michigan had performed the Heimlich maneuver on a choking classmate. A woman in Florida had stopped to help at a car accident. A man in Texas had donated blood for the first time in his life. "You showed people that ordinary folks can do extraordinary things," Robert had told her during one of his visits to the diner. "That's worth more than all the money in the world." Back home, life slowly found a new rhythm. Lisa still worked at Murphy's, though she didn't need to anymore. She loved the diner, loved the customers, loved being part of the community. But now she also spent time speaking at schools and community centers about the importance of CPR training. Every week she got letters from people who'd learned CPR after hearing her story. Some had already used it to save lives. A factory worker in Ohio had saved a coworker. A grandmother in Maine had saved her neighbor. Each letter reminded Lisa that her moment of courage had given others the confidence to act when they needed. Maya had started telling people her mom was famous, which made Lisa laugh. She didn't feel famous. She felt like the same person who'd been worried about paying bills and fixing her car just a few weeks ago. But she was beginning to understand that sometimes being ordinary is exactly what makes someone extraordinary. The little girl who used to draw pictures of houses with big yards now drew pictures of her mom helping people. "When I grow up," Maya announced one day, "I want to save people too." And Lisa knew that the best part of her story was just beginning. 2 years later, Lisa stood in front of the biggest crowd she'd ever seen. The convention center in Chicago was packed with over 3,000 people, now there to hear her speak at the National Emergency Response Conference. She wore a simple blue dress and comfortable shoes, still preferring to look like herself rather than trying to be someone she wasn't. Looking out at all those faces, Lisa remembered that scared waitress who'd knelt on a diner floor not knowing if she was doing the right thing. That woman felt like a different person now, though Lisa knew she was still the same inside. She still worried about Maya, still loved working at Murphy's on weekends, and still felt amazed when people called her inspiring. 3 years ago, Lisa began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone. I was just trying to make it through another shift at work. Never imagined that one moment would change not just my life, but the lives of thousands of other people. The audience was completely quiet, hanging on every word. In the front row, she could see Robert sitting with his granddaughter and her new baby. He came to every one of her speeches that he could, always proud to tell people that he was the man she'd saved. Next to them sat Maya, now 10 years old, who traveled with her mom whenever school allowed. Lisa had learned to love public speaking, though it had taken time. At first, she'd been terrified of crowds and microphones, but she'd discovered that when she talked about something she truly cared about, the words came naturally. And she cared deeply about making sure other people felt confident enough to help in emergencies. The most common thing people tell me is I could never do what you did, Lisa continued. But that's not true. Every single person in this room has the ability to save a life. You just need to know how, and more importantly, you need to believe that you can. After her speech, Lisa spent an hour meeting people and signing copies of her book. She'd never planned to write a book, but publishers had approached her, and she'd realized it was another way to spread the message about emergency preparedness. The book wasn't really about her. It was about all the ordinary people who'd done extraordinary things. After learning from her story, there was the teenage boy who'd saved his grandfather from choking, the office worker who'd helped during a building fire, the soccer mom who'd performed CPR on another parent during a game. Each story reminded Lisa that heroism wasn't rare, it was everywhere, waiting for the right moment to emerge. Miss Lisa said, a young nurse holding her book, I wanted you to know that your story is why I became a nurse. I saw what you did and realized I wanted to help people too. These conversations never got old. Lisa had heard from doctors who'd been inspired by her example, teachers who'd started including emergency training in their classes, and parents who'd learned CPR just in case their children ever needed it. The foundation Lisa had started with, some of the donation money was now operating in 12 states. The Everyday Heroes Foundation provided free CPR training in schools, workplaces, and community centers. They'd trained over 50,000 people so far, and Lisa knew that some of those people had already used their skills to save lives. Maya had become the foundation's unofficial mascot. She helped at events, handing out materials and talking to other kids about why it was important for everyone to learn basic first aid. She could perform CPR herself now, though Lisa hoped she'd never need to use it. Mom, do you ever think about what would have happened if you hadn't helped Mr. Robert that night? Maya asked. During the car ride home from Chicago? Lisa thought about this question often. I think someone else would have helped him, she said. There were good people in that diner. Maybe they just needed someone to go first. That was what Lisa had learned over the past 2 years. Most people wanted to help others, but they often didn't know how or were afraid of making things worse. Her story had given people permission to try, to step forward even when they weren't sure what to do. Back home, Lisa still worked at Murphy's every weekend. Tony had offered to make her a partner in the business, and she'd accepted. The diner had become a gathering place for the community in ways it never had before. They hosted monthly CPR classes in the back room, and Table 12 had become a kind of shrine where people left thank you notes and photos. Robert still came in every Thursday night, always ordering apple pie and coffee. He'd become like a grandfather to Maya, teaching her chess and telling her stories about his years as a teacher. His recovery had been complete, and his doctor said he could live many more healthy years. Do you know what the best part is? Robert told Lisa one evening as she refilled his coffee. It's not just that you saved my life. It's that you showed everyone else they could save lives too. It's that ripple effect is still spreading. He was right. Lisa got messages almost daily from people around the world who'd been inspired by her story. A man in Japan had started a CPR training program in his company. A woman in Australia had saved her neighbor during a heart attack. A teenager in Canada had helped during a car accident. The most meaningful message had come just last week from a mother in Texas. Her 5-year-old son had choked on a piece of candy, and she'd been able to help him using the Heimlich maneuver she'd learned after watching Lisa's video. "My son is alive because you showed me that ordinary people can do extraordinary things," the woman had written. Lisa kept that letter in her purse, along with dozens of others like it. On days when she felt tired or wondered if all the traveling and speaking was worth it, she'd read them and remember why her story mattered. Maya had started writing her own letters to people, thanking them for helping others. Her teacher had made it a class project, with all the students writing to local heroes in their community. Lisa loved watching her daughter understand that heroism wasn't about being famous or special. It was about caring enough to act. As Lisa tucked Maya into bed that night, her daughter asked, "Do you think I'll ever save someone's life like you did?" "I hope you never have to," Lisa said, brushing hair from Maya's forehead. "But if you ever need to help someone, I know you'll be brave enough to try. That's all any of us can do. Try our best to help when help is needed." Looking back, Lisa realized that the scared waitress who'd dropped a coffee pot and run toward danger had been braver than she'd known. Not because she wasn't afraid, but because she'd acted despite being afraid. That courage had created something beautiful. A network of people around the world who believed they could make a difference. The foundation kept growing. Schools kept adding emergency training to their programs. People kept learning CPR and first aid. Most importantly, people kept helping each other. It's inspired by the simple truth that ordinary moments could become extraordinary when someone chose to care. Lisa still thought about that Thursday night often, but not with sadness or fear. She thought about it with gratitude. One moment of following her heart had led to a lifetime of purpose. She'd learned that heroes weren't born special. They were made in moments. When regular people decided that helping others mattered more than staying safe and every day somewhere in the world, another ordinary person was discovering their own extraordinary courage, proving that the best stories never really end, they just inspire new beginnings.